Not live stream. Okay, I will call this meeting of the Environmental Stewardship Board to order at 6:32 p.m. Normally with this board, we don't do a formal roll call. However, since we have some new members, we're going to do that. Cameron Bowen. Here. Alex Berkey. Thank you. Hamakanapuli is not with us tonight. Sarah Graves. Here. Gretel Paval. Here. Thank you. Andrew Toth. Here. And then Sharon Unkart is not with us as of yet. Normally right now we would have our council liaison to your board, which is Amanda Henderson, give you a little address. She is, you're fine. Sharon, yes. Grab your nameplate. Let the record reflect 6:33, and Sharon Unkart is with us. So we're good. Our council liaison is at another event this night. She anticipates being here probably around 7. So at that time, we'll have her address the board and do a little introduction. In the interim, though, I would like to go around the room and do some introductions for our new members. And we'll have staff introduce ourselves as well. For the board members, for those of you who are returning to the board or continuing on, if you would just kind of give us an overview of how long you've been on the board, why this board was of interest to you, and what you think the biggest accomplishment so far of this board has been and what you're looking forward to. And for the new members, why this board interested you and what you hope to contribute. Okay, Brent?
Yeah, good evening. My name is Brent Soderlund. I'm Director of Public Works. Been the director for about 1.5 years now. So just in general, Public Works includes sustainability. It includes grounds and open space. We have streets. We have utilities, which is our stormwater and our sanitary sewer. We have engineering, traffic operations, fleet, and anybody else. So yeah, so there's like 8 divisions that are within Public Works.
Biggest department.
Yeah. Yes. There you go.
Biggest department.
Yes. So anyway, that's just kind of an overview of the department. So if you have any questions about any of those things, feel free to ask me. So thanks.
No, it's just thanks, Gretel.
You're good. No worries.
I'm Colleen Norton. I'm the city clerk. I've been with the city almost 15 years. I promoted to the role of city clerk in April of 2020, because why not promote to a department with no other employees at the time during a pandemic? You know, it's a great time to do it. Yeah, you know. The clerk's office is responsible for elections, managing all of the records, working closely with city council and our boards and commissions, very active in the recruitment, interview, and onboarding process. Most nights for meetings, you won't see me. I come in and do training at the beginning of your term, and then you probably won't see me again throughout the year unless I get invited for some reason. So.
Great. I'm Laura Rosenbaum. Excited you're all here tonight. I'm the sustainability coordinator for the city of Littleton and been here about 1.5 years. And just for some background, I'm the first person to have this role with the city, and also my position is because of this board. So there was an environmental stewardship action plan that I believe everyone received that was written and passed by council in 2024 and is embedded into the Horizon 2027 strategic plan. And one of the goals of the board at the time wrote in was to hire someone full-time. So here I am, and sort of chipping away at that long list, and we'll go through that a little bit more today, but excited to be here with all of you.
Sorry I was late. I'm Sharon Unkart. I'm new. This is my first time. I have a nameplate that's really like above and beyond. I don't even have a nameplate at my job.
If you give me a phone number, I'll call them.
We used to have them, but we don't have offices anymore. I hope I can bring a fresh perspective. I have read everything. I did all of my homework. I even brought my little signed form and my whole thing. I hope to bring a fresh perspective. I have a very long history of working in I'm in environmental health now. I used to work in environmental education, 25 years. So I just have a very long background in working for the environment. And I look forward to being here.
Cameron Bowen. And as a longtime resident of Littleton, I am excited to see how I can support, bring my expertise as I dabble in sustainability in my current position in the public sector, along with fleet maintenance and operations and maintenance and all of that, and how it all intertwines as well. So really, I'm here to learn, to help. I did my homework too, not as much as you did. But yeah, how I can support best and bring my expertise.
I'm Sarah Graves, all new. I'll echo using professional experience and also just my passion to help support the board and the city in kind of achieving a lot of the goals that are already set and maybe also set new ones or help to do so. I'm an environmental engineer for the state of Colorado. And prior to that, I was a municipal engineer for 10 years. So yeah, I worked for Yep, a lot of public works departments. I'm water, wastewater engineer. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm Gretel Pavau, and I've been here since the beginning. I'm the last of the original people, which is such a weird thing. Anyway, in my day job, am a third grade teacher, and then in the rest of my life, that is where the sustainability is. It's just my thing. It's what I do. It's how I live. It drives my family crazy. I'm walking around with a bucket. Like, when you get on the water, could you? And my husband's like, I think I'm done with the bucket. Anyway, so it's just my passion. I have compost piles. I have a huge garden. You name it, I do it. I made my husband buy us solar panels. So anyway, so I've been here since the beginning. And our biggest accomplishment, other than Laura, which is a huge accomplishment, is obviously our big document. And I think all the work that we are doing, and a lot of it's not really us, it's just coming from the area, the South Metro, but all the waste diversion, and with the goal of hopefully moving the city of Littleton into something more of a contracted waste hauler. That's kind of been that's been my thing all of the years I've been on, and we finally are moving a little closer. So I'm excited to see that finally happen. Hopefully it's so. That was all the questions, right? All right, cool.
I'm Andrew Tellis. I've been here for 2 years on this board, and I'm also a water wastewater engineer. I'm weird to need another one.
I know.
It's not that many of us. But yeah, I think environmental engineering is what I studied and just a core part of my life. And all things, right? With sustainability and environment. This last couple of years, I wasn't here when the action plan came out, but I was here as you were interviewing, I believe. I kind of started when you were first interviewing, so that's been really awesome to see a full-time person dedicated to environmental things related to the city. Because I think before that, there's only so much this board can do. There's only so much the council can do when they have a million other things to do. So I think that's just been pivotal. It's been really exciting to watch a lot of things happen. I think you've been really busy, Lauren. It's been a good time. So I think we're looking forward to the new board and seeing where we go. I would say that the last year we've kind of been trying to grappling with what is our core direction. I'm sure we'll continue that. There's just so much to choose from that I think that's been a topic that comes up pretty much in every meeting. Trying to keep us on a track, but what is the track? The action plan has been the track. That's a good track. So as you said, maybe there's new goals or maybe we just stick to the plan. We'll have to see, but I'm excited to see what we can.
Yep, hi, I'm Alex. I know my plate says Alexander, but Alex is fine. I've lived in Littleton since end of 2021. I'm really excited to be on this board. I came to the meeting last month to just kind of see what was up once I got my appointment. And I'm excited about licensed hauler, and I'm glad we have a full-time person with the city. That's really cool. I've not seen that before. My background is not in wastewater management or anything of the sort. I'm a software engineer. So hopefully I can bring some expertise in I've led a lot of different teams for large projects, and have a bit of a background in other, usually software systems design, like aerospace at my last job, and it translated pretty well. So yeah, hoping we can find some direction and some cool things to do to make the city more sustainable.
Okay, anything you want to add before we jump into training?
No, I'm excited to have all of you here. It's nice to hear everyone's, passion for it, and you're here for a reason, so. Yeah, should we dive into the training?
Let's dive into training. Be a refresher for some and new information for others. Right. And so this training was compiled with input from our city manager's office, our attorney's office, and the clerk's office, to cover those things that our council-appointed bodies need to know, and to talk a little bit about the different types of bodies. This is an advisory board, so this board will act by consensus, not by votes and motions. We do have quasi-judicial boards that act in a more formal capacity. And there may be times when other departments, and I think you've done this recently with community development, may come to you and ask for some input on some things that they're trying to move forward. So with that, so city council is our legislative authority. They are going to be the ones who are going to, with senior staff and with their direct reports, which are the judge, the city manager, and the city attorney, set policy. And then they are going to be responsible for enacting ordinances, which is how we change, update, amend our city code, is by ordinance. That's also, they may, via ordinance, move questions to a ballot during an election year. They also, as y'all know, responsible for appointing all of their council appointed bodies. They take it very seriously. They review every application that I provide them. They take the time to interview every person, so that they really are working to make the very best appointments for each body, so that we're encouraging kind of a robust interaction. And then our advisory boards each have a council liaison who will, along with staff, kind of help provide that direction. And you'll meet yours in just a little while. She's new to council as of November, and very excited to be involved with this board.
She's normally always here the whole time, so anomaly that she's even still coming.
So the city operates under our city code and our charter. Our charter works as our local constitution. It's our overarching document. We just completed a review process with a council-appointed charter review committee where we have spent about 6 months doing a comprehensive review of the city's charter to bring forward to council some recommendations. The only way that our charter can change is by a vote of the electorate. Council cannot arbitrarily change our charter. Again, it acts like our constitution, and we don't change our country's constitution without a vote. The code is more of our local laws, and so those, are you smirking at me?
Not
you.
I just had a random thought.
Well.
I think Brent and I had the same thought at the same time. It's like crazy.
I know. So as a home rule municipality, we do have the opportunity to enact local laws that govern local issues. Okay, and in those ways, we can often be more restrictive than state statute. We cannot be more lenient than state statute.
I think this is the Horizon 2027
Yeah.
sort of executive
Do
summary.
you want to kind of go over where they fit in this?
So, the sustainable community with natural beauty, that second item under strategic plan outcomes, comes sort of right back in the wheelhouse of everything that I do as a staff member, but also that this board falls under. And that is also where the entire environmental stewardship action plan is embedded underneath that item later in this plan. So that's how I sort of can link back to a lot of the work I do as being a directive of council. And so a lot of the work we've discussed, on waste diversion too, that's all embedded in the plan that y'all wrote and then was adopted through this. So this is just kind of a summary of it, and happy to send out, the full version of it, and then follow up after here.
Is this strategic plan different than the comprehensive plan, or are those?
Yes.
Yeah, so the strategic plan is something that council put together, and basically they came out with, I think it's 5 outcomes, which is the private community with rich culture and the sustainable community with natural beauty. I won't read the rest of them, but so that's their core plan. And then they came out with, I don't know, there's a bunch of initiatives.
I think 32.
Well, there's 32 2 to 3 year initiatives, but they're really long. It was
Yeah. And those initiatives are tied to departments and staff accomplishments and where we're taking the city. So,
And one is to implement the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan, which has 80 to 90 sub items. So just say that, it's just 32 is a little misleading.
Yeah.
So it's all embedded into there. So,
One quick question. So current city council came up with this strategic plan?
So current city council, we had new council members seated in November. And so this has actually been the work of council over a number of years. Our boards and commissions follow council. Anything that guides council, any of their adopted documents are going to be used for our boards and commissions as well. And I believe you were provided copies of most of this, probably not Horizon 2027 or the comprehensive plan. Those are available on the website. They're beefy documents. You should have all gotten a copy of the board and commission handbook. A summarized version of Robert's rules. I like to call them Bobby's rules. Council actually does operate more under Robert's rules, but y'all have a little bit of leeway. Council's legislative rules, their standards of conduct and protocol, which is how you work together as a board, how you work with other staff, how you work with council. And then rules of engagement. And really what this is trying to get at is that there's a standardization and that folks are working together collaboratively and collectively and graciously and treating each other with respect and courtesy.
and I'll hyperlink to the Horizon 2027 and comp plan in my follow-up email too.
Perfect.
All right, I guess I can
can
take this.
You can take that one.
So this just kind of outlines what the role of staff is as it relates to our boards and commissions. So, it's, you know, I'm responsible for preparing the agenda for each meeting, but then that's through, by preparing, I mean just sort of making the document, but the actual items are decided on usually by the chair and vice chair, but with input from the entire board. So if there's ever anything that you want to see on an agenda for a future meeting, you email your board chair, and then I work with the board chair to get that onto the agenda items. Also, it's scheduling or noticing any public meeting in cooperation with our city clerk here. And then preparing any other staff reports as necessary or any assistance that any of you need. So if there's ever, you know, anything that comes up, or any questions or concerns, you can always reach out, to myself and Brent. And we can, you know, figure out a solution to whatever it may be. But, yeah, those are sort of the main procedures. And then the other thing that I'll put on there is if meetings have to change, sort of the rescheduling of them and figuring them out, I'll coordinate that. And this is the time I'll also say that I will be sending out a notice to shift around the August meeting. And that is a personal conflict, my sister's wedding. Yeah. Maybe an overshare, but
Just
here we are.
bring it here, we'll do the wedding.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah, that'll be great. She'll love it. I'll put it on the agenda. But yeah, so I don't know if you want to hop into the city clerk side.
And so as Laura mentioned, the clerk's office will take the lead on making sure that our meetings are noticed legally and adequately under the open meetings law, and that we're putting them on. Hi, Amanda. That we're putting them on our website, and that we're putting them at the beginning of every year, council's first resolution is a resolution of where notices of meetings and public notices are to be posted. And for us, it's on our website and then at 3 physical locations, which is here at the Littleton Center, at our municipal courthouse, and at the library. And so I will coordinate that with staff as they provide agendas to me to make sure that that happens. I also will take the lead in uploading videos from all of our boards. I try to do it the day after the meeting if I can. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. And then also making sure that the website is up to date with members. If we have any mid-term replacements, we try to keep that as up to date as possible. And then both my office and staff will coordinate if and when we need to bring in someone from the attorney's office for a legal perspective.
So the role of boards, which you might be wondering about. So we have different appointments that we're going to do shortly after this for both chair and vice chair. So the board chair will sort of help lead the meeting process, read some of the language around public comment, as well as just keeping the flow of the meeting, and all of it will be posted directly onto the screen. So hopefully that's easy enough. And then it's also taking the lead on any study sessions or presentations to council when necessary. So each board or commission has a opportunity to do a study session with council, and they're encouraged to do so each year. And so that's the meeting that would likely take place for the board chair. And then this is also working with the vice chair to approve, and the department staff to approve the agenda, which could include a 30-minute meeting to discuss the agenda, which sometimes does need to happen if there are things that have changed or shifted around or anything like that. And the board chair also receives if people cannot come. So when you send that notice, it goes to the board chair too. And then the board vice chair is just, exactly what it sounds like. It's working with both the chair and department staff on the agenda, which could also include the 30-minute meeting. And then if the chair is absent, it's taking over those roles. So it could be leading meetings or study sessions or reading any of that official language. And then board members, which both include the chair and the vice chair, will communicate with department staff if there's an anticipated absence. So that includes our monthly meetings, but also any of those joint council study sessions, which usually it's 1 per year per board. So it's, about 13 meetings. And then if a meeting is missed, just making sure to watch the recording just to keep up to date, and then reach out if there's any questions. And then if you need to request one-on-one meetings with myself or Brent, your staff liaisons, in person or electronically, that's also with that.
Attendance and preparation. So this is covered in your board and commission handbook. Staff does strive to get out your agenda and packet materials the week prior to the meeting. We've made a commitment that packets generally go out on Thursday. Sometimes we get lucky and they go out on a Wednesday. And that doesn't matter if your meeting the next week is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We try to stick to that timeline so that you have enough time to review the agenda. If there are materials attached, you have time to review that. And so we do, back to what Laura was saying earlier, if there is going to be an absence, you communicate that to your chair and your staff liaison timely. And by being prepared, we expect you to have read through things, asked questions ahead of time if that's appropriate. For council, we do the same thing with them. Their packets are quite a bit beefier than yours. And they often have literally hundreds of pages of fairly meaty and legalese to get through. And we have a process with them where they can submit questions through the city manager's office, which are then sent to the appropriate department. And we can get those answers back to them as a whole prior to the meeting, so they're prepared. And so we would hope that if you are sent something and you have questions, that you're exercising that same opportunity to get clarification prior to the meeting. Communication is key. Over communication is better than no communication. You know, this board and others have, you know, poor Laura's been ghosted. Other staff liaisons have been ghosted by members, and look at her. Who would do that? And also covered in our handbook is the attendance. And so if members miss 3 consecutive meetings, and we're talking about unexcused absences, right? So if you've ghosted Laura and you're just not showing up, that may be an opportunity to reach out to council and say, you know, we have an attendance issue. We may need to think about replacing this person on the board. If you are working with your staff liaison and with your chair, you know, maybe you're having to travel for work, or someone's sister is getting married, or, you know, some such thing. Those are excused absences and they are separate from this. Open meetings law. So the open meetings law, or the sunshine law, states that any meeting of a government or local public body where 3 or more members or a quorum, whichever is less, where you are going to be discussing or possibly taking action on city business, that meeting must be open to the public. It must be noticed to the public in a timely manner. And by timely, they say at least 24 hours prior, with an agenda. Materials when practicable is the actual language. So what that means is, if we ever get into something where we're talking about subcommittees and things like that, if there are going to be more than 3 members, those subcommittees are now public meetings and they need to be posted. With council, we tend to err on the side of caution. Council gets invited to a lot of activities, a lot of meetings with other municipalities, other quasi-governmental agencies. And if we know that 3 members might attend, we post it. Even if it's not our meeting, we will post it. That's going to be less of an issue with a council appointed body. But we still, if you are meeting to discuss city business, even though this is an advisory board and you don't take actual action, you're still discussing city business. So if there's 3 or more of you. Now, does that mean if you have, Littleton's a medium-sized city, but it's a small town. And if you're paths cross at King Soopers or at one of our lovely establishments down having tacos at Sencali or something, right? And you happen to bring up something like, I'm excited to talk about this at the next meeting, that's fine. If you start getting into a full-blown conversation and members of the public are there and hear it, that can create an issue. So just be aware. Anything you want to add on open meeting?
No, I think, does that also apply to the emails?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay, that's the
Yep.
next one.
Oh, yeah, electronic meetings.
Real quick,
Yeah.
since we're consensus based, do we have like a quorum or is it 3?
You do not need a quorum. Yeah.
3 of us.
Yeah, advisory boards don't need a quorum to meet. For council, if it's a study session, they technically don't need a quorum either, but if they're at a regular meeting at the dais, we couldn't convene a meeting with less than 4 members of council because they wouldn't be able to take action.
So subcommittees are of interest. They either need to be a public meeting if it's 3 or more, or it's subcommittees of 2. So that's sort of what's deterred us from subcommittees, because then it's just, 2 of you.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. So what is a meeting? It is any kind of gathering convened to discuss that public business, right? That can be by telephone. It can be by email. It can be by a chain text message. You will be issued city email addresses, and it is the expectation that all discussion of city business, whether it be mailing out of agendas and packets or getting feedback on something, should be done with your city email. Now, with staff, generally when we send to a body, we will blind copy the body so that if one of you responds, even if you respond all, you're only responding all to staff. You're not responding all to your board. Because if you respond all to the board, you, in all likelihood, have just created an electronic ad hoc meeting that was not posted, and we're in violation of the open meetings law. And as an advisory board, the consequences for that are really more about transparency and how you're viewed, trustworthiness, things like that. If you were a body, similar to council or some other kind of board, where you were making decisions and you violated the open meetings law, you could be sued as a body. It has happened. And that also goes to making sure that your agenda is as clear as possible, that you don't have vague titles for things, right? If you're discussing, single hauler or whatever it is, it needs to say that. It can't just say trash discussion, right? So there was, based on something that happened in 2005, earlier this year, the City of Woodland Parks Board of Education was sued for a violation of the open meetings law because they basically put a housekeeping item on the agenda. And what that housekeeping item actually was enacting and improving a brand new charter school. And a citizen sued and was awarded over $140,000 in legal fees. So it's serious. Just saying. Something I take very seriously. So, what is not a meeting? Trying to get consensus to schedule something. Laura's going to work with you to try and reschedule August, or maybe have a discussion just not to meet in August. Whatever that looks like, that's not a meeting. Social media is another thing. We all have social media. It's the world we live in. Be very careful when you're representing yourself on social media, if it's your personal account, that you're representing yourself as a person and not as a member of a city board. And that's really for your protection. And I want to talk about text messages for a minute. Even though none of you have city issued email addresses, text messages and emails, even on your personal accounts, can be discoverable under the Open Records Act. Now, would I have the access to that? No, but somebody could file a lawsuit and your personal records could be subpoenaed. So again, why we want to use our city issued email accounts. Okay, not trying to scare anyone, but real stuff. So this is where we talk about full and timely notice, at least 24 hours prior. Really important not to discuss things that are not on the agenda. So if it has not been agendized, it is okay to say, I'd like to have a conversation about, and then Laura and the chair can say, okay, we will look at putting that on a future agenda, but you can't really go into it and have a discussion, right? And that is because the public has a right to be at these meetings and to be prepared to hear what you're going to talk about. And if something gets sprung, they haven't had time to do their due diligence. And you will find that we do have citizens that are very engaged in a number of our boards. And so, any questions on that? That doesn't mean if it's not on the agenda, you couldn't say, hey, I'm gonna go downtown for happy hour after the meeting. Anyone wanna go with me? That's fine. That's not city business, but if you can't bring up future projects, things like that, and have a conversation. So this is where we talked about some of the ramifications. If a board were to take action on something and then they were found to have violated the open meetings law, whatever decision they made could be voided and actions rolled back. So just, you know, we talk about public trust in the board and transparency, that's important. But if we find someone who is continually kind of skirting that line, that can be a reason to recommend removal from a board. So don't poke the bear. I just, Open Records Act. So your city emails, anything that we send using our city emails, those are subject to FORA. And those all come through my office. I have a records analyst who processes all of that. So just be mindful of what you are putting in those emails with your city email. Yeah.
I run into this at work, because I work for the state. And I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If I activate my city email on my phone, my whole phone is then correct? Because that's how it's at work, that's how it works.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Again, because it's your personal cell phone, there would have to be a subpoena because I wouldn't have access to your phone.
Okay.
And your emails we can get to without your phone. But
They have to like specifically request it though, right?
they can request emails, and with those, they don't need to know that you're accessing that on your phone. We're gonna go through our IT department.
It's no big deal. I mean, my work email is on my phone.
But
I'm already
it's
confused
something
just
to
to
be
know.
aware of. It's certainly something to be aware of, right? So in order to avoid liability as a member of a council appointed body, acquaint yourself with our charter and our city code sections that address boards and commissions. All of that is available on the website. Know the limits of your authority. What is your role here? If you're not sure, if you ever need a refresher, if you're ever thinking that maybe you can push a little bit further, talk to your staff liaisons, right? Talk to your council liaison. Make sure that you're not stepping kind of over a line that may cause some conflict. Ex parte communications, again, we're not having communications about city business while we're sitting down having a margarita at Palenque, right? Like, we're not solving the problems of the city while we're doing that. Although with a margarita might be easier. Maybe, right? And always, always, always work with your staff. That's what they're here for, right? You are citizen volunteers. We are employees of the city. Let us take on that liability and responsibility for those kinds of things. Anything you?
No, I mean, I'll link the city charter, but it is definitely lengthy, so, you know, you can peruse it and
There's one section for boards and commissions, and then the same with our code.
I'll put what section that is, because if you read the whole thing, you might not want to come back next month. So we'll start with linking that.
Just those sections.
Yeah, I mean, feel free, but
Yeah. Any questions, comments, concerns? Anything we didn't cover that you wish we had? Okay. Well, just know that you always have resources. If questions come up, even if it's, I know they said something about it, but I don't remember what it was. I have a philosophy that there are no stupid questions except the one you don't ask, right? So before we get into board leadership, now that Amanda Henderson is here, our council liaison, I'm going to give Amanda a chance to address the board. Introduce yourself to our new members and kind of what your role is as liaison.
Great. Hello, everyone. I'm Amanda Henderson, and I apologize for being late. The Littleton Arts Celebration was happening over at ACC. So I'm back-to-back events. I grabbed a fistful of cheese before I left, so we had some dinner on the way. I've been on council since November, as I think most folks know, and I'm loving getting to see all of the amazing things and people that are part of the city. And so I am your liaison to the Environmental Stewardship Board, and it's been fun to see the work that has happened over the past 5 years or so. Oh, thanks. I didn't see that over there. I'm sorry. To see the work that has happened in developing this Environmental Stewardship Board and the plan that has been built. And so I'm here to be a connection between the council. So to share with you all council priorities, what kinds of questions we're asking, the things that we are looking at and working on, and then also to take the things that you all talk about, the things that are important to you. It's my role to take that back to the council. And additionally, because I am who I am, I want to help you be the most effective board for yourselves and for the community, because it's a lot more fun to be a part of something that is effective in moving toward our shared goals. And so I want to help support that.
Okay. As one of my last acts here before I turn the meeting over. So each board does have a chair and a vice chair. Now is when we will entertain nominations for chair. There is no shame in self-nomination. You know, if you're a new member, that's great. Gretel is our, up until yesterday, that's our chair. Terms for boards run April 1st through March 31st. Even though you are appointed to a 3-year term, new terms for chairs start in April again. And from what I understand, she's done great. So, again,
Loosey-goosey with me as chair, but whatever.
you bake and you bring cookies.
Not very formal.
Not formal, brings food. That's her nomination pitch.
So vote for me.
I would entertain nominations, self or otherwise, for the role of chair.
I'd be interested.
Oh, okay.
I'll nominate Gretel.
You want to nominate Gretel? Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, do either of you want to speak as to why you would be interested in being chair before we call for four?
I guess I'll start. I jumped on it pretty quick. Yeah, I guess I don't have the kind of the expertise in the particular areas like some folks have as engineering, wastewater and stuff like that. But I've led a lot of teams, interested in, I'm aligned pretty well with, I think, Amanda's goals. We all want to be effective. We want these meetings to be productive, city more sustainable, and I think that's kind of my main focus. And I hope I'd do a really good job as chair and kind of focusing the discussions while maybe folks who have a little bit more expertise than I do can get down into some more than nitty-gritty.
Awesome. Gretel, first, do you accept the nomination? And if so, do you want to say?
Yeah, I don't have a problem doing it again. That's fine. The only reason I was last time is because again, being the senior person and the other two other senior people looked at me and said, it's your turn. Okay. So it's fine. I don't mind doing it again, but I also am not attached to it, so it's fine.
Okay. With a show of hands, all in favor of Alex as chair?
This is hard.
Nobody's gonna hate you for your
There's
actions.
also always vice chair.
Yeah, there's still vice chair, you know. And then, you know, second, third, fourth, no, I'm kidding.
Stack rank the whole way.
Yeah, we're just gonna. Right. So, all in favor of Alex, and you're allowed to vote for yourself. Show of hands. Okay, that's 3. This is gonna be difficult. Gretel? Okay, Gretel, okay, so 3. Well, but it's 3-3.
Yeah.
So how do we want to break the tie? Should we call Tom? My proxy. Proxy.
I would nominate Alex as vice chair if Gretel were, for some reason.
Well, we still have to get through
I know,
chair.
just putting this out there. If Gretel were chair, somehow we move past this impasse.
That's fine.
I mean, I nominated you, so I can switch. I didn't know if you were passionate about it or not, but I think I'm comfortable with the seniority and then.
I think the seniority would be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor of Gretel remaining chair? Okay. So congratulations, Gretel.
Thanks.
Nominations for vice chair. Andrew, I know that you had nominated Alex. Alex, would you accept the nomination as vice chair? Okay, anybody else interested?
I'm actually interested in vice chair.
Man, okay, well, we've heard Alex talk about.
I am too, just so everyone.
Whoa, interesting.
Okay.
Geez, last time it was like, come on, somebody do it. I was like,
What?
Fires out. Okay, do you want to give a different pitch, Alex, for vice chair, or are you comfortable with what you said before?
I'm good with where I'm at, I think.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Sharon?
I've also led a number of teams. I would really like to learn the ropes, so having a chair who has experience sounded like a really good idea. And I actually came into the meeting thinking I wanted to nominate myself for vice chair because I'm here for at least 2 years and I plan to do another 3 if the council puts me back on. And so I'd like to get some leadership kind of guidance before I start heading down that road.
Okay,
I think similarly, I'm like passionate about leadership roles that I've held, and this can be a ceremonial nomination if nothing else, but I just talk a lot and I love public speaking and giving presentations and all the things that people usually
anytime.
don't like, so. And I really miss the nitty gritty of municipal work that I used to get to do.
Bring them to my office.
I know.
Have a conversation.
So that's, and like I said, it can be ceremonial nomination, if nothing else. I'm not extremely hung up on it, but just wanted to put it out there.
A gift to have so much enthusiastic.
Okay. Well, we'll start with Alex. All those in favor of Alex being vice chair? Oh, that's four.
He said ceremonial.
There'll be no shortage of opportunities.
Absolutely.
Time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Gretel Pavau as chair. Welcome back.
Thanks.
And Alex Berkey as vice chair. With that, my work here is done. I'm going to adjourn the transitional meeting at 7:23 and turn it over to Chair Pavau. Thanks, everyone. Anytime. George, throw the
Nomination.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, thank you.
All right.
I just had to get the timer in. Okay. Do I need to call it to order, or was that good enough that that we were done with our transition?
I think we're good. Yeah, just read the public comment language. We can.
Yep. If you wish to address the committee under public comment, please prepare for the time limit of 3 minutes per speaker. We expect comments to be civil, disrespectful, or disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. The board is not authorized under the Colorado Open Meetings Law to discuss, comment, or take action at this meeting on any issues raised by public comment that's not part of tonight's agenda.
I wouldn't mind just introducing myself, so. Hi, my name's Di Collingwood. I'm the executive assistant with Jovial Concepts, who is a local nonprofit. I know we are not in Littleton proper, but we are a Silver Colorado Green Business Network member, and we're learning how to be gold. And I heard that this is one of the boards that we can learn a lot from and how we can improve our programming. We have a 9-acre food forest, which is located in Friendly Hills. So if you're going up Quincy towards the Home Depot at 470, we're in that development to your left. We have over 300 fruit trees. We have 70 raised beds. We have a backyard garden program, 15 school garden programs that we're involved in. We have Friday night movie Under the Stars. So what family low PG rated movies that we show. We have a fall festival where we had 1,900 attendees, 30 vendors. We would love to have, if you guys would like to table at that event to show what you do here in Littleton, show off what you do here in Littleton, I should say. But I'm here just mostly to introduce and to make you aware of what we have. You can go to jovialconcepts.org. In fact, this Saturday we have an Easter egg scavenger hunt, which is, it's not filling your kids with candy or money or anything like that, but there's little stations as they pick up an egg and they will find something that is garden related that they can do, whether it's planting a seed or learning about soil, or we have a hummingbird garden, we have a butterfly garden. We just are installing a medicinal indigenous labyrinth on our property with a fountain. And so there are so many cool things going on. It's an open foothills green space. So you and your dogs can come walking through. Don't bring your motorized vehicles, but you can come walking through. We'd love to show you. We have on staff Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 to 2-ish. We'll say. We also have, I should say, our gardenability program, which is working with individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we got a lot going on in that 9 acres, and we just want to make sure that you folks were aware of it. And you'll see me popping in from time to time to see how we can improve our processes and understand a little bit more about what our neighboring communities are doing and how we can keep our earth greener and ourselves healthier. And I like to say the happiest I am is with my hands are in the dirt and my butt's in the air. That's one of the best ways to go through life. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak and listen.
Thank you so much.
I'm just gonna sit down.
Sorry.
So my name is Pam Chaperone. I have a blogger, so from here, I go and have gone to board commission council meetings for 3 or 4 years now. I'm glad all of you showed up and actually are on boards and commissions. But one thing I want to say about the open meetings law and stuff, you heard a kind of a legal and burden version of the presentation. What I want to remind you is that everybody in this building is here for the public good and the general welfare. And ESB is one place where I can say that and get nods. Thank you so much. So think of it as, you know, including the public in your discussions joyfully, and they aren't that bad. And you think of then, oh gosh, the public aren't here, so let's not talk about this until we can include and engage them. The public doesn't come to a lot of meetings. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. We can improve that. Littleton should. We used to be a community, period. And we are more separate now. And ESB, I think, is a part of rebuilding that trust. So let's see if I can mention my things. I just want to clarify that the City Council has 7 members, only 2 new members were seated in November, Amanda's one. This is the content of meetings that Colleen talked about in the agendas. I'm going to ask you actually, if you've ever watched this on the video online, you can't see the name tags, you can't read your names. Colleen says, oh, it's not needed to do roll. It's needed to do roll. You should call your names every meeting and get that on record. We've had trouble with attendance. Not that attendance is horrible. The charter used to require that you know, if you miss 3, you're gone. So anyway, let's call roll and get that on the record, please. And striving to have the agenda the time before, like I say, include the public. Let us know what's going on. The concept of talking, and if a member of the public hears you, that isn't it. It's not whether the public hears you, but that you want the public to be included and engaged in what we're doing here, I think. Finally, what I want to say is you all have some really good team background. And we have a city agenda for the year. We have a budget. Staff department leads know they only have so many people with, you know, certain amounts of time in the 12 months. And then city council meetings are tentatively scheduled for major things like the Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan in downtown. You guys should be on that schedule before it comes to city council. Thanks very much.
All right, Laura. All right. I can move over to some updates here. So, oh, that's tiny. There we go. Perfect. So I just wanted to provide y'all some updates on all of the different initiatives and work that I've been doing. And a lot of it ties right back into the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan. And I'm giving, you'll see that the date on there is April 21st. I should have changed that for today, but that's the time I'm giving this presentation to council or something very similar. There's going to be a couple of tweaks, but wanted to give it to all of you first, just so that you're up to date and aware of all the different things that I've been working on, and I can make sure that I get all of the different feedback and comments that you may have. So I'm going to go through climate planning, building decarbonization, some internal as well as external updates for accountability. You actually will not see the external. That's actually y'all. So I'm going to give an update to council about this board, but I figured the board doesn't want an update about the board. So I was thinking that today. And then waste diversion. So the climate planning process I've broken it down into this 4-phase process, some of which was dictated through the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan, particularly the greenhouse gas inventory. So that's been completed, and I'm happy to link to that as well in my follow-up email. And it's a 2023 baseline year, but completed in 2025. So it's a 3 to 5 year update after 2025 and from 2023 to get the next set of data. And from that, now working on how we're modeling our climate goals. So looking out to 2050 from that baseline year of 2023 emissions, how much do we want to reduce and by what? And so in February, we brought that initial presentation to the Environmental Stewardship Board. And based on some of that feedback, we're actually going to go back and do a bit of a feasibility and cost analysis to add to that before giving the information to council so that it's a little bit better known what is tied to that and what it might look like if you're reducing, part of the built environment emissions by, say 70%, and we want to do this much for, heat pumps, or, what does that cost and who is bearing that cost was kind of the bigger conversation there. And then we're also doing the climate risk and vulnerability assessment, which I'll get into, and then it's all going to lead into a resilience and adaptation plan, or like a comprehensive climate action plan, like a CCAP. So yeah, this is,
Laura, can I ask a question really quick? Just, was the greenhouse gas inventory done primarily just using arithmetic, adding everything up, like doing an inventory of what's in the city and doing kind of an emissions estimate and adding all of that up? Like how was that put together?
So there's a breakdown of all of the different math and assumptions that are put in the appendix of it. But at a high level, it is sort of through this partnership, if you've heard of ICLEI USA, a nonprofit that the city's a member of, and they have a technology called ClearPath, and now ClearPath 2.0, which is now what we're on. And it has a lot of those calculations built in. It means I did some of it, but so it was all done in-house by me, and then a little bit through the membership, but none of it was contracted out. So I did the technical assistance office hours. That's part of the membership every week, because I wanted to make sure that everything I was doing was correct and by the book. So it all follows the US community protocol standards for our greenhouse gas inventory, which includes, some of it is, particularly the waste sector, is definitely estimates because we don't have localized data, which I can tell you in our waste diversion update, we're trying to change that. But that's definitely an estimate. The rest is an estimate because it's really hard to ever know, but it's not as much of an estimate as you may think, because it's pulled directly from Xcel Energy, Denver Water, our wastewater treatment plant, and going through an analysis of all of those bills and the exact amount of carbon emissions and calculating the carbon dioxide equivalent for each of those. So, give or take anything with this kind of inventory, but I do think, to the best of what the data is for the year and at the time, I tried to make it as accurate as possible and really worked to catalog, all of the employee commute and doing a new survey for that and all of that. So it's all in the report, but that's sort of my little high level spiel to answer your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to send that out or answer any questions about it too. I also presented it to council, so I can link to the council presentation as well, if that's helpful, where I sort of broke that down a little bit more. So I wanted to go a little bit more into the climate modeling, because I know some of you heard about it in February, but we have a lot of new people. So there's a lot of different interchangeable words like greenhouse gas goals, climate modeling, a wedge analysis. It's actually called that because it looks like a wedge when you map it out for different levels of emissions. So you have business as usual or BAU. And so that's the technical term for wedge. It also will just inform pathways for Littleton to achieve and set how we're going to reduce the emissions at the current level. So no one's ever really done this before for Littleton. So we have our 2023 baseline, but it's saying, by 2050, we want to reduce our emissions and by what percent. And that's kind of what I'm working with ICLEI to model. And since that's a lot more complicated, they're helping a lot more with it now, of really crunching the numbers in the platform I already inputted all the data into to say, okay, so what would it look like if we were to get this many cars off the road and transition this many people to biking and walking and get this many people composting and get the methane out of landfills for our waste, right? So it's sort of looking at all of that and giving recommendations. However, the way that those are achieved is something that will likely be put into the resilience and adaptation plan once the climate risk and vulnerability assessment with a lot of public input is taken into account. So there's a lot more to it, because in order for any of it to be successful, we need a lot of buy-in from people, because it's not just, the government doing things, but it's us being able to have incentives or programs to help transition people, and bring everyone along with us. So this is kind of like the high level, and then it gets more and more into the nitty-gritty, I think, as we keep going. So it's just to prioritize what those actions might be, and it also includes some alignment with current state and federal policies, particularly around, if the state, it's really a lot around the state and what they're doing and offering in these different sectors helps different cities reach their goals by taking advantage of different state dollars. So I can explain that too, as particularly in the building decarb sector. So the climate risk and vulnerability assessment, which kicked off February, so about 2 months ago, is underway, and it's an assessment of the ways in which a community or region is susceptible to the impacts of climate change. So I mean, the big part is that we want to be a city for years to come. So how can we be resilient, prepared, and adapted to what we know is coming? And so part of it is the identification of the risks through geographic information systems or GIS mapping, and figuring out who's vulnerable and what the city is vulnerable according to local data, state and national data. So that might be FEMA or NOAA, as well as the state has different data like through our demography office. And then we also have county data and the fire district and Denver Water and Xcel Energy to say, okay, based on all of this, who would be susceptible to flooding, extreme winter conditions, which feels ironic right now, but it is a thing that will happen, extreme heats, wildfires, right? Droughts, which we're now in a phase 2 for the state of Colorado, for drought. So how can we, knowing that this is coming, what ways in which and how are we protecting the community for years to come? So it's sort of taking that data, but then bringing it back to the community and saying, this is what we know, but what is your experience? What is your lived experience? How do you interact with Littleton? What ways do you feel vulnerable or want to understand how to adapt to what we know is coming? So that's kind of what that process is. The consultants are hoping to come in June to do a presentation to the Environmental Stewardship Board. They're hoping to do council in May, so that's a tentative agenda item. And then we're doing our first technical working group. So there's sort of 2 different processes within this. It's a little confusing, so feel free to stop me. We have a technical working group, and that is comprised of experts who, for their full-time jobs, and I'm sure many of you in this room might actually overlap, but we have representatives from Denver Water, Xcel Energy, our wastewater treatment plant, South Platte Renew, the Mile High Flood District, the Fire District, all Arapahoe County. We've invited Jefferson County, Douglas County. Jefferson County is, I think, participating. I think Douglas County hasn't decided yet, but they have been included, as well as different experts within our local government operations. So we've got the police, as well as our facilities and emergency response with the county. So all of those coming together to say, what is missing from this data? We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot already in place for these types of weather events, but I don't know if that thread has really been done both regionally and at a city level for where residents really understand, okay, this thing is happening now, like, am I at risk? Like, if there's an Xcel power shutoff because of a high winds day for wildfire risk, like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And figuring out sort of how to thread that needle as a technical working group. And then we'll also have a stakeholder committee, which all of you are welcome and invited to join, but that's any resident with the city of Littleton can join that workshop series to provide their input and feedback into what they want to see based on, we're going to bring some of this data, but also really understanding the needs. And if people, who in the community doesn't have access to transportation that would need that if something were happening, or, the need for a resiliency hub. So working a little bit with the Department of Local Affairs and the consultant to figure out if there's a way to identify what makes sense as a region and if we can get something like that going with any state funds or money. So it's really just trying to prepare for the worst, but with the idea that we're gonna be here for a long time. So like, let's adapt and work together. Doesn't have to all be doom and gloom. At least I put a picture of flowers in a QB, because it's not all doom and gloom. And so the high level plan is that all of this, the greenhouse gas inventory, the climate modeling, and the climate risk and vulnerability assessment leads into one large resilience and adaptation plan. And so that will also integrate the South Metro Waste Diversion Plan, as well as the building decarb work to say, okay, here's data, here's community input. We're gonna keep getting community input as we develop the plan. But what are our clear action items? What's our tangible guide for Littleton to adapt to a changing climate? And I really do wanna rely on this board as a stakeholder when this process comes, because it's gonna take, you know, the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan and say, how can we shape this to be something that works across the entire city, across, you know, the business sector, across commercial sector, as well as like for residents. And, you know, what are we doing that, you know, it's gonna have to be dictated by council, what's voluntary or mandatory, how different programs work, but what are those priorities? What's the lowest hanging fruit to both reduce our emissions, but also, you know, protect our resources, our parks and all of the above. So that's kind of the plan. And then because there's a separate transportation master plan, I've been working with the transportation team very closely, and they're doing a new transportation master plan this year, and will likely be talking to ESB in this coming year to figure out a stakeholder for that process, but then cross-referencing and working together for each other's plans so that we're not fully reinventing the wheel every single time. That's something that sort of they're undertaking, and it's a little bit similar with water. We have an integrated water resources plan, as well as we are a total service area for Denver Water, which makes it a little bit, it makes it a little bit less creative, but we can always encourage water conservation and figure out ways to work with Denver Water. They actually have their own climate adaptation and resiliency team, which I did not know until recently. So that was really exciting. And they're participating in the climate risk and vulnerability assessment. So there's all these things out there. And so what can we do? What do we know is available? How can we make sure we're using the resources at our disposal? That's kind of what all of that's leading to.
Really quickly,
Yeah.
if you're gonna get to it later, that's fine, but do you have like the general timeline for these things? You said the inventory is done.
Inventory's
The
done.
goals and climate modeling is in progress. The CRVA is also in progress. And I would presume the plan has like a general goal date of when you would like it
Yes.
done.
So the climate modeling with the additional feasibility analysis, the latest it'll be done would be by the end of the year. When it comes to council is kind of up to the discretion of council's schedule. But that being done can also go in with the resilience and adaptation plan. So I can always present it to the Environmental Stewardship Board and get feedback before we wrap up with ICLEI, so that that's sort of set to go to council whenever it makes sense for them. And then the climate risk and vulnerability assessment will be completed no later than August 2027. And then we'll go out for bid for the resilience and adaptation plan, fall of 2027 to kick off January 2028, January or February 2028, depending on the procurement schedule. That's sort of, you know, a very chill plan, but yeah, that's that's what I sort of have in my mind as those dates and been working internally.
No, that's helpful. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, for sure. If there's ever any questions or I can clarify anything, please stop me. Sometimes there's a word that you don't know, just let me know. But I'm moving on now to the building decarbonization, and I realize that might be a word I should define. So before I move on, is there any other questions on the climate planning? And you can always bounce back if we have any.
I guess my other one, the main, it seems like the main metric here is greenhouse gas emissions. But then the actual like resiliency plan would obviously involve, you know, like water usage, fire risk, things like that. It seems like that's the greenhouse gas emissions is like, that's the main statistic that's going into a lot of it.
That's part of it. I would say that there's still a lot of data going into the climate risk and vulnerability assessment, because that's like all different like accumulations of data based on our tree canopy, based on fire risk by the state and FEMA and NOAA. So there are a lot of other, and like Arapahoe and Jefferson County counties are putting a lot into that. and maybe behind the scenes a little with Douglas, we'll see. But definitely Jefferson and Arapahoe, and then the fire district. So they also have their own sets of data, particularly because they have different hazard mitigation plans that have to then be certified by FEMA. And so Littleton's part of Arapahoe County, so a lot of our data will come from there. And we're mostly Arapahoe County, but I'm working with the other counties to make sure nothing is left out. But yeah, we're actually in the process of doing sort of that data gather, and that's part of the technical working group, is figuring out what are we missing. We might need certain, it's like maps and data layers. So it's a lot of it's done in GIS, like ARC Online. Actually, I think they're using ARC Pro mostly. So they're doing a lot of that and that different type of data requests too.
Okay, cool.
It seems like there's a lot of crossover too with like an emergency action plan. I'm sure that Littleton and Arapahoe County have all, because it's all the same players that would
Yes.
be. Okay.
So they're all, so this kind of goes a little bit beyond that, because that is like, okay, how are we reacting? And I'm saying, okay, great, that's wonderful. We should know how we're reacting. We should all be on the same page. But not only how are we reacting, but how are we building systems to adapt and to be resilient, both with our built environment, our natural environment, to say, you know, there are really cool programs. Like there's an awesome one in Boulder County where you can get certified if you take certain steps on your property with like certain fire suppressant plants and like native, you know, flowers and things like that that really help. I don't think it's actually flowers, but native plants that really help suppress or not have fires jump. And then through that certification process for Boulder County, they then get lower property insurance rates because they're like certified through that county program. But then I've also like heard a report, which I'm sure people on this board have heard me talk about because I think it's really cool, that there was a woman in Lyons that was reporting on Colorado Public Radio that there was a fire that went through and they were certified and their home wasn't touched by fire, and around them homes were burnt down. So like they're like, it actually works. And we were actually out of town when it happened and we came back and our home was fine, our neighbors weren't, and it was really crazy to see that some of the stuff we did, it wasn't like, you know, thousands upon thousands. It was a little bit of an investment, but knowing that we had that protection was key. We got lower insurance rates. So like stuff like that, there are really cool programs out there that can come out of this that say, it doesn't have to be that every single person is getting solar panels. I mean, that's great. And if people are, you know, able and we can figure that out, awesome. But there are also other ways to look at this and figure out, you know, these pieces of a puzzle. So that's sort of one program that I'm like really curious about the feasibility in Littleton. We'll have to see. And I'm always at the direction of council and elected officials. So it kind of depends, but there are some really cool opportunities there. I don't know if that answered your question.
It does sort of. Everything
Yes.
is all interconnected, I realize, so it's
also
brand
interconnected.
new, so I'm just
Yeah, no, it's okay.
trying to connect all the dots.
Yeah, that's kind of this world, right? It's all interconnected.
Plans, so many documents.
Yes. Yeah, and a lot of it is, so this is like the planning process, and then I'm gonna jump into what I'm doing in sort of other sectors now in tandem with what this is happening, but wanted to make sure y'all understood what this journey was and the direction we're headed.
You might have mentioned it, sorry if I missed it, but is the state's environmental justice data incorporated into this as well? Okay.
I'm using, is that EJ Screen?
Yeah, EJ Screen.
Yeah.
I'm using it's, or Colorado's Enviro Screen.
Yes, EJ Screen is EPA. but
EJ's
that's gone now.
What's EPA?
Yeah.
It's now housed.
Has it though, it's still out there.
It's housed in a couple nonprofits, so we have access to that, but I've been mostly using Enviro Screen, and we are using that because I am really trying to push forward a lot of Colorado's narrative around disproportionately impacted communities and figuring out what it looks like to help, you know, help funnel more resources to people that really might be stuck if there were a disaster. So like the resiliency hub piece, and that would go into, you know, a bigger state program. And then I'm open to the idea that that's not just a city of Littleton. Like if what makes the most sense that people will actually use is in Arapahoe County or unincorporated, I just want that to be something that's useful for people in the community if something were to happen. And, you know, the idea that that would be on a microgrid, right? Sort of the concept. But we'll see, it depends on the Xcel Energy lines and the water pipelines and all of these other factors. So But that's gonna be part of the climate risk and vulnerability assessment, sort of really dive in to see what the feasibility would be for that. All right, so building decarbonization, basically, how can we make buildings more energy efficient, and how can we try to make our building sector and built environment emit less greenhouse gases, whether that's, you know, carbon dioxide, which is sort of the main one that we use as our equivalents when we talk about greenhouse gas inventories. So everything sort of, even though like methane might have a higher output, it's like then converted into an equivalent. So I think it's 29:1. So methane's much higher in its output, but then it's converted into an equivalent. Anyways, I got off on a tangent. But anyhow, we just found out that we received a sub-award with the Denver Regional Council of Governments for their Building Policy Collaborative. So that's $900,000 in non-matching funds. So I'm going to council to explain sort of what we applied for in that award, and it is all for building policy and ordinances and code updates. So it's very specific and prescriptive in that manner. There are three main overarching goals that we're going to work on. One is the exploration of embodied carbon in Littleton with a potential for an ordinance. And so that's kind of a fancy way of getting at construction and demolition waste. And so doing an entire literature review on other municipalities that have been able to look at their commercial sector and say, okay, what are the ways we can recycle and reuse materials, what things can be reclaimed, like reclaimed lumber is a policy that they have, I think in Oregon and Washington State. And so there's a really cool, I think there's one in Oregon, one in Washington State. There's a couple in Colorado that have different ordinances like that. So looking at the feasibility and then bringing those options to your elected officials to see really what that could look like to model in Littleton, and if there's either an appetite for a voluntary, a minimum, or exceeding, you know, sort of type of standards ordinance to really figure out that piece of the puzzle of waste, which also goes back to some of the different waste diversion goals that the city has identified as well, but kind of goes back to it because of that embodied carbon piece in those materials. So like all of the different things that went into making those, how can we reuse them? The next is the adoption of Colorado's low energy and carbon code with evaluation of possibly exceeding minimum standards. So that's something that will have to be passed by municipalities, but sort of in that goal, doing a deep dive into Littleton's building codes as well as our green building incentives as part of our Unified Land Use Code. I thought I was gonna mess it up. ULUC, which is Title 10 in the city charter. So figuring out what ways we can make that a more successful program as alongside our building codes to adopt this, but also figure out sort of those best practices and do that internal audit. And then the last one is a residential baseline energy assessment. And so that one's kind of in flux right now because Dr. Cog is a nonprofit, and as part of the funds that they got, this is all through a EPA CPRG grant from 2024. So they do have the funds in their hands. I literally check that every other week, but they are doing their own baseline energy assessments, basically figuring out how single family and small multifamily units can essentially be more energy efficient, what that looks like in home energy assessments and audits, and coming up with a report. There's a lot of literature in the commercial space and not nearly as much in the residential side, and Littleton's emissions are 1/3 residential, 1/3 commercial, 1/3 transportation. So we know this is a need, but depending on what they find, that will sort of dictate exactly what that assessment might look like specific to Littleton, and if it still makes sense to do it based on their findings. So we're working closely with them too. And I'm also bringing this as a separate presentation in more detail to council on April 21st.
Is that 900,000 for Littleton or for Dr. Cog is a large organization?
That's just for Littleton.
Do you have, I assume you do have like a plan for executing those three? You mentioned energy assessment we'll see, but the other two Are you doing like consultants or?
Yeah, so we're going out to formal solicitation through our procurement department and likely doing a part A, part B, part A being these first two goals, part B being that last one to allow for finding of new information before we go in through that, but hopefully looking to go out to bid this summer and really getting that up and running so that we can get someone on board to really start with goals 1 and 2. I think 2 will really start next year and 1 will more so start this year is the hope, but like probably later this year depending on the procurement process. Because it's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, yeah.
And we have an end date for it. September 2029.
Okay. Have we ever as a city like partnered with a university or something for something like this? Like that much money could pay for like 12 PhDs to do.
That is not allowed with, no, there are a lot of restrictions with these funds, so you can't, there's a lot of very, very specific parameters around what it can be used for, and unfortunately that is not one of them. There are very, very few places for wiggle room in terms of what I can use this money for. So I did a lot of and if, what, buts, and it's for the entire community based on building policy and local codes and ordinances and how we are reducing that in Littleton. Yeah, so yeah, that contract language will also be something council approves, and I believe a public document as well, if anyone's interested. It's pretty prescriptive, so, but it's all through public and nonprofit agencies, so it should all be public. That's exciting.
Did the goals come, the goals specifically from Dr. Cog, or those like what we, maybe a few previous iteration of the board came up with for the best goals to spend those funds?
It's what we came up with internally for the best goals to spend those funds. So I sort of went through the different allowable uses across a couple of departments, and this is sort of where, you know, we all compromised to come up with this as being making the most sense. So hitting that some of that waste stuff that the construction, demolition, embodied carbon piece was like one that I really was hoping to hit, and then the low energy and carbon code was definitely something really important to our internally and for the whole community too, to really get into compliance and see what more we can do and if that's appealing for our elected officials. And then the baseline energy assessment was actually, that was a recommendation from Dr. Cog, but based on our emissions profile, they thought that it would be really interesting and maybe a good pathway to help residents electrify in the future based on that data. But again, that might sort of be in flux depending on what they come back with that study.
Very helpful, thank you.
Yeah.
The processing.
Yeah, sorry, it's a lot of information. I can send the slides to y'all as well. And it doesn't have to be the end of any of these conversations, so.
Imagine if we had 2 people.
The other thing I'm excited to tell y'all is that we are starting an internal green team, so working to get a representative from every department to have a meeting every month to learn what everyone's doing, where we can identify gaps, how we can do better as a city with our own internal waste audit, so figuring out how to right size and sort of get my own champions across departments of how to recycle, and then moving into hopefully some compost piloting projects within the city itself, which is exciting. And then we just have champions across departments, so it's always good to hear what other people are doing, how we can all work together, and what that looks like. But thought that y'all would be interested to know, and definitely council will be, but that's just kind of a high level update. And yeah, they're supposed to have their first meeting later this month, so just in time for Earth Month.
That's just for like internal stuff, like.
Yeah.
City.
Yeah, so when I present to council, the next one will be the Environmental Stewardship Board, but I decided to not present that slide to y'all because that felt a little silly about how the board's doing. Yeah. You mean the past like hour and a half? Yeah, it's great.
slides for that already.
Actually, I haven't filled out any of the content. It's just a photo and the title. So no, I haven't made the slides for it yet. But I'll probably just give high-level updates of what has been going on with the Environmental Stewardship Board over the past year. So it might not fully encompass all the new members, which I will say to council too. You know, this is what we have been working on. We have had a lot of turnover. So we have maybe new things going on too. Now I'm gonna deep dive into waste diversion. So basically when I say that, I just mean how can we get our waste out of the landfill and divert it to composting, recycling, or hazardous waste, or, you know, electronic recycling, and what does that look like? And I'm so sorry to Andrew and Gretel, but I'm gonna give a little bit of background. We did a South Metro Waste Diversion Plan with the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment's Colorado Circular Communities Enterprise, I'm gonna mess it up, C3, through their technical assistance for the public sector. It's like strategical technical expertise for the public sector STEPS program. So we did that with the cities of Centennial, Englewood, Sheridan, and Littleton to really do a deep dive into, okay, what's going on here? What are we throwing out? What are our opportunities? What should we be focused on? And from that plan, there were 9 Littleton specific actions and then 3 regional actions. And so sort of chipping away at all those, I presented October of last year and have direction from council to explore and bring to them a hauler licensing program, as well as an equal space ordinance, and then an outreach and education sort of launch and plan. So I'm gonna go into, I could go into so many different things on that one plan alone. I'm happy to send that to y'all as well. But since we're focusing on these things this year, I'm gonna focus specifically on the equal space ordinance, the hauler licensing, and the outreach and education efforts as updates until I get more direction from council. So equal space ordinances require new commercial buildings or significant remodels to provide the same amount of space for recycling infrastructure as for trash, ensuring that future developments support recycling access. So basically it's when you think about when you go into that back alley and there's a giant trash can and like literally nowhere to recycle, and then a multifamily complex kind of uses that as a cop out of, well, we don't have the space. This is sort of getting ahead of that, of saying, okay, well, moving forward, how can we actually think about the ways in which we should provide that? And for those of you that don't know, there is a law that was passed in 2022 called the Extended Producer Responsibility Law. That is also through the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, or that's where the program is being administered. And basically the overarching goal is that by 2030, they want all Coloradans to have access to free recycling through having producers of and manufacturers of packaging goods and materials and products pay to have that come into Colorado. So, you know, Amazon, King Soopers, but also any business that has a budget over 5 million that uses these materials has to then pay, you know, how are we actually going to have an in cycle for those and a circular cycle for things, right? Like we're not just going to put it out into the world. And so the harder it is to recycle, so like think about when you have a little plastic top and then it's in something else, and the harder and the more materials, the greater the fine is for the company. So they're being incentivized through the market, and a trickle down of those funds is, you know, access for free recycling for all Coloradans, but that's very much local government to local government specific. And so figuring out the best way to make sure that our residents and businesses have access to that. So I think this is a good first step of, okay, well, let's get some of this infrastructure in place. And so that's kind of what that's been recommended for the city as part of the South Metro Waste Diversion Plan. There are some really great ordinances in Superior, Broomfield, and Fort Collins that might help us sort of figure out what makes the most sense and an option that best fits Littleton. And so we'll probably bring that to council as part of some of our larger updates too.
I think one of the things we're fighting too is the public perception that recycling doesn't work and they all go to the same hole. I know my neighbors have that perception because I'm a militant recycler, and they're like, why does it matter? It just goes to the trash people anyway. I'm like, no, it doesn't.
That's an set me up in an amazing way because I wanted to ask this group about the idea of setting up a joint, and it would also be open to the public because it's a public meeting, a recycling tour for where our recycling goes for this region, because it's really different. So I want to do that with council, the board, inviting the public too. And maybe we do 1 or 2 dates and really have people see what the operations are. I think I've done a couple of those tours, and for anyone else that has, it's really eye-opening of understanding. We have a really strong glass, aluminum, cardboard recycling stream. Our plastic is also pretty good. The thing is plastic isn't graded. So I think the idea is, people have said for so many years, it's on the consumer. Well, what Colorado says, actually, no, it's on the producer. So if we're getting that stuff out of Colorado anyhow, and it's hard to recycle, the producer's gonna pay eventually. So you're gonna start seeing those downstream effects is my hope. But really when people are talking about recycling not being recycled, they're talking about like plastic and like really, really like black plastic. And usually it's because there's not a market to resell it. So a lot of recycling, it's done through a lot of those waste companies because it's a for-profit model. And so I think that's sort of what the state was trying to get at with this law in a way that we can really help convince people. There's also a huge state campaign going on with all of this at the same time, which I'm hoping will really help push that momentum. But I think, is there interest in this group from setting up some type of recycling tour? Maybe I could send out a scheduling poll and figure that out with you for council. And once we get council's schedule, probably then sending it to y'all. And then once we come up with a date, posting that for the public to join, and then getting, figuring out that transportation option too. I've talked to Colleen about it some, and she said we can figure out an omnibus, or if you drive personal vehicles, you have to sign waivers. So.
We can probably talk somebody into driving the omnibus.
What did you say?
I said we could probably talk somebody into driving the omnibus.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Jen, yeah.
The South Platte Renew is also an incredible tour.
Yeah, we could do that.
Weeks ago. It's awesome.
South Platte what, sorry?
Renew.
Oh,
The
yeah.
wastewater treatment plant. Yeah.
I just didn't hear the last word, sorry.
Yeah. No, I think the recycling would be nice for joint with council, and then the South Platte Renew we could do separately as a board, invite the public, but I think council does their own for South Platte Renew, but I also thought that would be a cool opportunity to get, a little bit more interaction, because, you all have in common is that you care about Littleton, right? The public, council, people on board, so, let's get out in the community a little too if possible. So I think I'll talk to you, see what we can coordinate and figure that out too.
Is there any option for the composting? Visiting.
Such a great question. So composting is definitely a really big gap. I would say a lot of the feedback that I have heard is moving in the direction of having that option as like an opt-in moving forward. But really, right now we have people that aren't recycling correctly. So I'm a little nervous about adding a 3rd bin for everyone. There was a lot of issues when they did that in Boulder. I know that to be true. They ended up having to stop their recycling and like change a bunch of things because the contamination is such a big deal for compost. And I'm saying this as someone that composts myself and cares a lot about it and wants to provide that to the community. But I think that's gonna have to be something that's like down the line when we look at something like contracted hauling, more so than in something like equal space, because it's usually not addressed in the same way, just because of different types of concerns from having too large of an access like this. But figuring out that puzzle piece is something that I'm sort of trying to weave in. It might be something that would be addressed more with contracted hauling moving forward, and if that's the direction that our elected officials and electorate want to move. I think based on this small sample size it is, but I don't know if that's a really fair assumption.
We're not a fair sample of.
I don't know if we're a fair sample of the population. Yes, and is where I feel with that. The state has not passed, but they have talked about passing mandatory composting and providing that access. Right now, the state is in a complete budget bind of funding all of Medicaid. It's not a good time to ask for anything with the fiscal note going through the legislature. So it's a really, really tough sell to add anything more than what had already been passed and really getting those programs in place.
Have you talked with Longmont too? I mean, I'm sure you probably have, yeah.
Mhm.
The things that Longmont has pulled off have blown my mind.
So Longmont has their own operations.
Oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's,
Oh,
yeah,
good.
it's really cool.
Yeah.
City.
It's all city.
Their internet is all city, their
Yeah.
trash, recycling and composting is all city.
Yeah.
Their internet bills are $45 a month.
Yeah.
High-speed internet. I'm not talking like.
I will say
anything.
to get there for that stuff is, a bit of an infrastructure undertaking,
Yeah,
right, for any
for sure.
city, and so then that's,
You also have to tax us. We know how much people love that.
yeah, that's not the direction I've been tasked to move, is like, I think we would move closer to the contracted and really holding someone else accountable. There was no discussion of me starting
I mean, it
our
would
own
be
trash
huge
and-
for Littleton to go there.
Capital costs would be.
Yeah, it would be huge. But Longmont, I mean, I don't know how Longmont got themselves there.
Yeah, I have a meeting with her in 2 weeks.
I'm really curious how, is it, I mean, I've watched it happen over the last 30 years.
I'll have to ask their sustainability office, cause I'm meeting with them soon, and that's a good question, I don't know. And they have some really cool programs, but, yeah, they're about 30 to 50 years ahead of the metro region and sort of where their infrastructure is too, same with Boulder. Yeah, so we're playing a little bit of catch up. Which I think makes us rely a little bit more on what the state is doing, since we're in the current federal climate that we're in with that loss of money and the trickle down impacts.
Yeah.
I don't need to say anything more to that, but yeah. The other exciting thing that we're looking at is hauler licensing. So right now we are looking at going through that technical assistance program again, but just with the city of Centennial and on a much smaller scale, just to do hauler engagement and really make sure that we can understand the best way to figure out how to have a licensing program. So right now, there's no license in Littleton. The only guidance is a noise ordinance and times of the day, I believe, that you can make that noise, but that's kind of it. And so moving into, well, in order to operate in Littleton, you need to meet this certain set of standards, and coordinating that with Centennial so that it'll also make it easier on the haulers. And so that will help as we keep moving through this process to really get them on board with things. But I will also say there's a really funky state law. So if we were to go contracted hauler or single hauler in the future, if that was the direction of council and the electorate, that would only limit the sector for single family and multifamily units under 7. So if you're a multifamily unit with 7+, you're considered a commercial entity. Commercial entities and HOAs that do their own contracted waste hauling as a group are exempt from any city contracts. They can opt in, but they do not have to. Whereas single family homes and small multifamily units would have to. So this is a way to limit the amount of haulers for the whole city. So instead of having, I think we might have somewhere between 14 to 17. It's a bit unclear. We could get it down to, and this wouldn't be a competition, this would be as long as you meet it, you can operate here. And you'd have to pay a certain fee per truck you put on our infrastructure. And that would just hold a little bit more accountability. We could do things like, well, why do they offer recycling? And have them track our tonnage so that we can have more accurate greenhouse gas inventories in the future. And so that just creates like that guideline. So a lot of cities will have licenses and something like single hauler, contracted hauler. So this is kind of that first iteration and then seeing what the direction is moving from there. I think is sort of the overall concept of it. And then, so we're doing that hauler engagement, we're developing what that license requirement could look like. A lot of other cities have them, so we have a lot of different blueprints, and then aiming for that November fee schedule adoption with study sessions and other presentations as deemed fit through the process. And so it should go into effect January 2027. I don't know if there's anything you have to add to that?
No, I think. Covered it all.
I'm new to the conversation, but do you have a sense that there's like a number or like an amount of the callers that would opt out of servicing this area if this were to go into effect?
I think it would opt out a fair amount depending on what they are able to provide. So if they can't track the tonnage then and report that to us, then and they can't pay the fees, then they can't operate in the city. And
We can
so
require that they provide recycling, right?
we can require that they provide recycling.
That'll eliminate quite a few.
And I mean, I'm all for a local business and I've said this a lot. I love a small mom and pop store, but it's very different to have your local bookstore or your local nonprofit. I come from the grassroots nonprofit sector. It's very different than your mom and pop waste hauler. It's an interesting practice. It's pretty unique to Colorado. And it kind of leads to a lot of other issues with truck traffic and optimization, honestly, economies of scale and the way that the pricing works. More is not better in this sense. So I probably am preaching to the choir here, but more is usually not better. So I think right now I know moving towards, contracted hauling, I think there's probably two vocal minorities, people who really want it, people who really don't want it. And I think the majority of people don't care. They just want to know what it is and that it's cheaper. And so really getting and having that information is important as we move forward, which brings me to education and outreach. So we are implementing an internal communications plan to figure out the best way to really shape this story. So another state program, the Extended Producer Responsibility Law, creates the state to have and appoint a producer responsibility organization. So they have picked a nonprofit called Circular Action Alliance, who is providing reimbursements to municipalities at per household waste rates for outreach and education on recycling very specific. So there are certain things that are allowed under those funds. I sort of got the first round and then I'm applying for the second round and hopefully receiving more funding starting from June 2026 to November 2027. That's allotted for Littleton to really see the best way to boost that education. And so part of it is that we can do more recycling tours with the public. We can really get people to understand and have more trust in the system and recycling here in Colorado because it's so different locality. So we're looking at working with EcoCycle and Boulder to really help us with that. They have been leading the way for many years and they're familiar with our South Metro Waste Diversion Plan. We can do things like train the trainers. So if any of you are really passionate about it, you can get trained and help train your neighbors or your HOA and figuring out really how to make sure that this sort of is an effort that kind of makes sense, but also it monetarily will make sense. So really making sure people understand that we're really trying to figure out. I know some people will have reservations for more government involvement no matter what, but really in this one case, like it provides more transparency and we can really lower costs for people. And so for those of you that are new, there's this like really interesting study in Fort Collins. It's part of the South Metro Waste Diversion Plan where they had the same company from household to household and they started figuring out the cost of trash and recycling per month. And there was up to like $50 variance per month, depending on for this exact same services for the same company, depending on how well you negotiated with the waste company. And who's to know that? So then it becomes an equity issue and this other issue of like, who has the time to negotiate with your hauler? Is that something we should really be doing? Right? So then you get into all of these other nuances. And I think that creating more understanding around how this can work better for people. And also it's safer. Why do you want to have these trucks all the time? They're heavy, they tear up the roads, I'm sure Gretel and Andrew and Brent have heard this a lot, and Pam heard this so much. But yeah, I feel strongly that there's a better way to work the system. So with, direction that. So that's kind of where that is going. And then, yeah, I am happy to take more questions now or at sort of any time, but that gets out a lot of the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan, but not everything. There's still some missing pieces.
So much.
Yeah.
You've been very busy, which is great.
Yeah.
What's the vibe of council or Amanda on when it comes to the solid waste discussion? Is that something the council wants to take on, or is there enthusiasm?
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of support and enthusiasm for moving this forward. I think generally there's a lot of support for environmental sustainability as a priority across the board, and then for the contracting and waste management process moving forward. I think there's a strong desire to move toward the single hauler contract. Excellent.
This is just the first step in that
This is a
process.
step.
I have a vague memory of a survey that the city sent out asking us about single hauler.
That was probably part of this.
That was definitely part of the South Metro Waste Diversion Plan.
Because I definitely filled it out, I remember, and I said, I want recycling and composting done by the city. I said it very clearly in my survey. I don't
awesome.
remember when it came out, but I remember saying.
Yes, I think it probably would have
only
come out.
one.
It came out actually before I was hired in early to mid 2024.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Laura, so we have like 6 minutes left. Should
Okay.
we,
Yes. Let's go up to the,
next, sorry.
yeah,
We
no.
can do more of this later.
Okay, chairwoman.
Done.
Gotta,
Yeah, we,
Squares are back.
yeah,
yep, your squares, rectangles.
it's,
Blocking out the one.
no, it's gonna go away.
There.
They love to keep coming up. So yeah, the possibility of the recycling tour, and then is there interest in the wastewater treatment plan as well? Always. Yeah, always.
Yeah.
The wastewater council, the team definitely want us to go.
Yeah, okay, great. And then I think, if it's good with the board, the consultants that we hired for the climate risk and vulnerability assessment wanna come in June, and I can get a better picture from them on what exactly they're hoping to get out of it, what they wanna present, but they were like, can you see if the board would like us to come then?
That would be great.
And then for next month, is there, you know, what it might look like to, if there's still a desire to have the communication strategist come, or if,
That
communication.
kind of feeds in with the education outreach thing too.
Absolutely.
What can we do to help with that?
If I can see if he can come in May and we could walk through our plan for the education outreach and really get y'all's input and opinions on that.
Because that was something that we brought up at past meetings, is how do the members feel about being part of that? Like actually going out and talking to people, having a booth or whatever. I'm glad to see heads going up and down. It was a bit of a. Anyway, I'm just glad. Thank you. It is a new day.
Great. And then is there anything else? And if there is anything else that we want for May, we can email Gretel and we can get that on the agenda, or if anyone has anything now. Cause I just gave you a really big laundry list of a lot of different things.
It doesn't have to be for May, but I'm interested in, like, I know there's a bunch of stakeholder groups that exist, and were there any previous positions that, like, I know TMP is gonna be one, probably Littleton Boulevard sub area, project downtown.
Yes, actually, right now, you are now the primary representative for Littleton Boulevard Sub-Area Plan, but we need an alternate for the Littleton Boulevard Sub-Area Plan. Board, I think it's a board, or ESB representative for stakeholder.
Thing.
If anyone's interested in that,
I'll be liaison.
The transportation master plan, that probably won't kick off till this summer, but there will be an opportunity for somebody from the board to be, I guess on their technical.
yeah, like a representative of our board and making sure our interests are.
I'm interested in the Littleton Boulevard
Yeah.
master plan. Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
like 5 blocks from my house, so I'm definitely,
Okay.
definitely interested in that.
There's also the community open house next Thursday.
And where is that?
That's at the Epic campus, from 4 to 6:30, I think it is.
I can add you as the alternate. I'm sure that the transportation team will come to me when they want a representative, and they'll either come in person or they'll have me send out a call via email or in a meeting like this. But yes, there will be those opportunities as well.
My other specific one for there's like a sales tax advisory board or something that I have heard of, that I thought had an ESB member on it, but perhaps not.
I think city council appoints the people.
Like
to that board.
CTASA, or I forget what the acronym is.
So every year we have to give an update, or we present to that committee on how we've spent what's called 3A, the capital tax. And then that committee presents to city council on whether or not we spent the money correctly. So that committee's already established. I think it is appointed by the city council.
I don't think we ever revisited it.
No, I don't think so.
There was one.
I've never had a
You can
call.
check on that. I think.
I can check, but I've never had a call to appoint anyone since I've started. And the only two people since I've started that are still here are y'all, so I would think.
I think there is a member from each board on that.
You do?
I do, yeah.
Or do you think it's each quasi judicial board versus advisory?
But I thought ESB
Well,
was, yeah, I
We'll
thought.
find the
ESB was-
answer and we will let you know.
ESB might be new. The person I was talking to said that it was like potentially a new thing, but that part of the guidance or but like the guidance for that board, like included making sure that the sales tax funds were spent to promote sustainability. And so I was like, oh, we should probably be on that.
I will find out and get back to you, because I am not 100%.
Meeting in April, so.
I should find out.
Yeah.
And then we also have, the city of Littleton is helping sponsor the Littleton is for Locavores Earth Day event on the 25th. I will be tabling there if anyone wants to come say hi. As well as our Tri-Cities Green Business Coordinator, Aiden, who runs the program it's a state program for Littleton, Sheridan, and Englewood. So he works in all 3 cities. And what else? There's a whole slew of different events that I sent out to y'all that's happening sort of throughout the month as it relates to Earth Month. So I can send, I think there's one other one in May that someone told me about, like right after I took the email. So I'll send that one to y'all too as another opportunity as well. But yeah, I think that's, yeah, is there anything else agenda wise or?
Just speaking of email, I've been like stress checking my spam folder because I feel like the IT thing's gonna go to that. So if you can just give us a heads up when the like city emails get set up, just so
Okay.
I don't miss it.
Yes. Yes, that sounds good. I can do that.
So we should expect that email saying those are getting set up sometime this week?
I'll talk to the IT department.
Okay.
You don't want me sending out the emails, but I'll talk to them and I will get it sorted and I will communicate to y'all what the plan and the timeline would be for that. And if there's ever any issues with city emails, you can always reach out to me and I can connect you with the right person in our IT department to figure out any type of technical glitches, if you're locked out or if you happen to travel or do a lot of other things, we can figure out the best way for us to communicate.
But yeah, if anybody, I feel like our agenda for next time's not huge, but.
No, it's not. So if
Anybody has anything they wanna put on the agenda, let us know.
yeah,
We can
you
certainly.
can also email
revisit
me.
the action plan too and just see if. there's-
Yeah, I mean,
I do feel like we just need some more like grounding in what,
Alright, let's do
where we
that.
are.
Visit the action
Revisit the
plan.
action plan too. is what I was
Yeah.
saying, So we can pick that up for conversation.
And then you'll be able to sort of see based on the updates I gave today, hopefully where gaps and integrations are and what other things the board might want to fill in or look at as we be moving forward.
I feel like I've got a lot of reading to do.
Yeah.
Maybe not in bed, but yeah.
No.
Okay, anything else from our?
I don't have anything.
I don't have anything from council. We've had a couple weeks off, so it's been quiet. I don't know what to do with myself, so.
You'll have more stuff, yeah.
I guess at a high level, I'd be interested in, one of Colleen's slides said that, you know, I might be able to find my note for it. Probably not, it doesn't matter.
I can send the slides too.
She said something like, you know, our direction and focus should kind of be set by city council, and I felt like, you know, I guess I'd be interested in kind of figuring out what relationship we want there. You know, because it seems like city council is very interested in our input. And so maybe it's circular where you tell us what to focus on, we investigate that and give input back. But if there's also room for us to set our own agenda, I'm sure we can also do that. But trying to figure out how to make that most productive might be a worthwhile agenda meeting next time as well. Or coming up with high level we might want to tackle through the rest of the year. I think a bunch of us are on the same term cycle now.
Yeah.
So yeah, something like that might be a good agenda item as well, but I'll leave it up to you for chair.
I think that's great.
That's
And I think it's just super helpful because Amanda's been just phenomenal in that you've been at all of our meetings, which is huge.
Yeah.
And we can also talk a little bit about what that study session could look like later this year. We have not had it yet. And last year we had it in March, so, you know, it was kind of before the new board.
Is that scheduled yet? Sorry.
No. So I can always get something tentatively on the schedule for fall or late fall, and so it might also depend a little bit on what else we talk about as priorities next
That
time.
reminds me, you need to reschedule August. Do
I
do
also
that
need
now
to
real quick?
reschedule August.
Or do you want to put that on for the
No,
next
I have to figure out all the different rooms and different things, and then I'll send y'all dates in a poll.
Okay.
And if we want, the options are either cancel August or move August. And I was gonna go towards move, but I guess we can also cancel. It depends.
I will say, I'm on a belated honeymoon for 2 weeks of August, so that will be tough for me personally, but thank you.
And we're always the first Wednesday of the month. I mean, when we don't have to miss
Yes.
anything, right? We're the
Mhm.
First Wednesday of the month. Okay.
Yes, and that's the only one that I will be moving this year. Apologize for that.
And we shouldn't have to add any this year either, like we did the first year.
You're always able to add more meetings if you would like.
But I think we're okay. It was a lot.
It's always an option.
Our first year, we met a lot more than 12 times. It was a lot. But we got a whole action plan out of it, so it was worth it. And
A great
it
artist.
just took a lot.
From your perspective, is there anything in the action plan right now that's hot on the table that is where we should be looking right now?
Well, I mean, the waste diversion is kind of a big,
That's
definitely
the
a big one.
main thing for the year, for this year?
I mean, we didn't really have like a set, agenda for the year. It's not been that organized. So just because we've had so many differing opinions and views and priorities, so it would be nice to kind of set those a little bit more,
Yeah.
especially since the heads are going up and down. That we
I
can,
think maybe next time having some more discussion about like, we can just go around and talk about what we're interested in. I'm aware of a lot of different like plans and updates that city is planning over the next few years. That, you know, I think should absolutely have a sustainability and environmentalism tilt to them or input. If I was taking the plans, I would say tilt, but I'm not. Yeah, I think there's a lot of room to kind of set like the rest of the year agenda, and we can maybe focus on a few things.
And I
We
think
don't have so many meetings.
one of the things that's interesting about environmental stewardship compared to some of the other boards is that environmental stewardship is woven into everything. And so it's not a like discrete project, but it is more dispersed. And so it might be an interesting approach to look at the different projects and priorities of the council and then identify an environmental goal within each of those that you all can bring to those projects, whether it's the Littleton sub-area plan or the transportation mobility plan. So I can work on bringing as well, like here's what council is working on for the next year and looking at how that lines up with the environmental action plan might be a strategy.
I'd be interested in the things city council has already identified.
Yeah.
We can kind of get on those votes.
Yeah, work smart, not hard.
That's great.
Okay, are we good?
Yes.
All right, let's adjourn.